Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Blue Ribbon Lounge podcast.
Welcome back to the lounge.
And we got a stone cold episode for you.
Or at least a wintry mix episode for you.
An icy rain episode.
Yes.
How is the weather out there, Davey?
It's starting to sprinkle.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Probably get pretty bad when the sun goes down.
yeah, they said with it being warmer, and seasonably warm last week, that it'll take a couple hours before the roads start freezing up.
Oh, okay. So, like, once all the water's down,
Yeah.
it'll freeze up real good.
And probably, once the sun goes down.
Excellent. Cool.
Yeah.
We're doing this new kind of topic outline.
Yeah.
The little riff for all. And
Right. Little nuggets of information that we found interesting throughout the week.
I usually deep dive into one.
Yeah.
And then last week you did a couple of different ones, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
You want to start us off?
Sure. Have you heard of a gentleman named Gary Parsons?
Gary Parsons.
Graham Parsons.
Graham Parsons. That name does sound familiar.
He was born Ingram Cecil Connor III.
Wow, what a name.
Yeah, I that's why I threw it in there. But he was a drummer and like a folk singer songwriter.
Okay.
He started his career with the band the International Submarine Band.
Okay, that sounds tight.
Yeah, and they started in New York, but they weren't quite getting traction, so he convinced his band to move to California.
Hell yeah,
Where-
you do.
Yeah, and then they actually got some traction because they opened for like Iron Butterfly and The Doors.
Okay.
They were like an opening band. They never really made it big. But then he became part of the Byrds.
Oh, okay.
Byrds.
Okay.
And he was actually one of them that helped kind of change their sound.
Okay.
And it's arguably like one of their best albums. He was a part of the band when they wrote that and performed it.
Well, the Byrds are like a really weird looking band.
Yeah. Well, they're like kind of folky, but also not. But that one, like Bob Dylan made the song famous, the "You Ain't Going Nowhere."
Okay.
If you know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
Tomorrow's the day when my bride is gonna come. Ooh-wee, right behind.
I don't know.
Oh, right down into the easy chair. Anyway,
It sounds like a good tune.
it is, but they were the
And
originals.
Bob Dylan's good.
Yeah. And then after that,
The Byrds had fucking David Crosby. Is that from Crosby, Stills and Nash?
Yeah.
And then Gene Clark. I
Yeah.
feel like he went solo on a bunch of stuff.
I think so.
Wow.
But after like an extensive tour in Europe, I think Graham Parsons' drug problem
Ooh, you can't have that.
started to get in the way.
I
and-
mean, you can have it. It just can't become a problem.
right. But it started to get in the way, and so I think they asked him to leave the band.
Okay.
And him and one of the other members got together and created the band the Flying Burrito Brothers.
Oh, jeez Louise. What
Yeah.
a bunch of good names.
Yeah, and they were critically acclaimed, but
Okay.
never financially or like never caught on mainstream because the critics liked them, but they never could really find an audience.
All right.
And then after that, he started his own band, just called GP, like Graham Parsons.
Oh, okay.
And he went on to like write his opus and whatever. And during that time, Clarence White had passed away.
Who was
Some
musician dude?
musician in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And probably more bluesy. 'Cause they were like more bluegrass, blues, folky. So
Okay.
a lot of the names I don't recognize too much.
I mean, like most of the names I would recognize would be either the band name or, the members of bands who have been around forever. So
I think one of his claims to fame is one of his best friends was Keith Richards.
okay.
And he kind of helped influence Keith some. They were like best friends. They
Okay.
did drugs together, and
yeah.
Graham lived with them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But so him and his manager Kaufman they were playing at the funeral, and while Clarence White was being lowered into the ground, and Graham was like, "Oh man, don't let that ever happen to me, man. If I die, I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes spread in Joshua Tree, which is a national park in California." So Graham goes on to write his opus. I forget what it's called.
What is an opus?
Like his best work, like his masterpiece, his opus. And so then Kaufman told him, "Hey, why don't you go out to Joshua Tree? You like it?" After this is later, like years after that funeral, and he writes his opus, and he's like, "Hey, go celebrate." He goes out there with a friend and some girls, some chicks.
Hell yeah!
And they like hit up the bars, and they spend a lot of time hiking and stuff. But then one day he decides to mix his liquor with morphine.
Oh, you can't be doing that.
Yeah, and he doesn't wake up. So initially the coroner declared his death to be from natural causes, but it was pending autopsy.
Okay.
And so,
because I mean, something like that from the outside could look like a heart attack or a stroke or something. I would think.
So the guy he was with, his name was Fisher, took all the drugs and stuff out of the room.
Okay.
And took Parsons' car and then drove back to L.A. just to get away before the police showed up.
Yeah.
And so to like also take the women away so they weren't going to be implied in anything that happened.
All right.
And
good dude. Good dude.
Yes. And then once they get to San Bernardino, or California, L.A., he calls the San Bernardino coroner's office and finds out that Graham's body is going to be
buried.
Moved to the Los Angeles International Airport to be transferred to Louisiana, where his family wants him to be buried.
Okay.
And so
because once you're dead, you don't really have to stay.
Right. And then Kaufman and this guy Martin, they get coroner outfits, and of course Kaufman has this classic Cadillac Hearst that he drives around in.
Of course he does.
Yeah. So they drive to the airport, and workers of a funeral parlor, but they said that his family had arranged for them to take the body to a different airport.
Okay.
And he's going to take a private flight, like from Van Nuys. And the cargo manager couldn't find like a transfer slip.
Okay.
But he's like, well, this guy's a rock star. Maybe he's like super last minute. Okay, guys, go ahead. And so Kaufman signed the invoice as Jeremy Nobody.
Okay.
And they're drunk, of course, and there's a cop parked behind his Hearst, and so he has to be like, hey, can you move so we can get the body in? And then they were struggling with the coffin, and they got the cop to help him. And it said that Kaufman was so like nervous and paranoid because he was drunk, and the cop was like right there, that when he went to pull out, he ran into one of the walls of the cargo hangar.
Oh God.
But then the guy, obviously the cop was...
It was the 70s or 80s or whatever, so...
Yeah, or he didn't suspect him of any illegal activity, because you're stealing a body. Who would think that you're stealing a body?
He was.
What they do is they drive out to Joshua Tree, drive out into the desert, pull the casket out, open it up, dump 5 gallons of gasoline in it.
Oh, gosh.
Set it on fire, and then speed away.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and on their way back to Los Angeles, the two stopped to sleep off their drunkenness. When they wake up, the Hearst wouldn't start, and they had to hike to a mechanical shop. And then after a couple of repairs, they got the car started, but then they ended up involved in a car pileup on a highway where they ran into another car, and another car ran into them, and so on and so forth. And when the cop came and they opened their door, a bunch of beer cans fell out. So he's like, what?
Classic.
So he handcuffed them, and then he went to go get the name of the other drivers or to help them out, make sure they're okay. And these guys jumped in their car and drove off. And since the cop didn't get their license or their license plate number, they just got away.
So the two drunk guys
who
Kaufman,
stole a body, yep,
jumped into somebody else's car.
Back into the hearse.
Oh, okay.
Because they were like, moving him off the side of the road, and when they opened their door, the beer cans fell out. The cop's like, hey, smell beer on you, handcuffed him, went to see if he could help anybody else, but he didn't take their license or their license plate number. They jump back in the car, handcuffed, and drive away.
And just like using your knees.
Or something. So they're like, maybe the one guy is like driving, the other guy's doing the pedals.
Yeah.
But then following after that, there was the report of the body theft, and then the casket was cited by a bunch of hikers because it's a huge fire. There's 5 gallons of gas, And so when the police got there, the body wasn't thoroughly cremated.
Because that's not how that works.
Right, and there was it says there was 35 pounds of body remaining.
Which is, a lot must have burnt off. That sounds like mostly bone.
Yeah. And then witnesses, of course, saw the hearse speed away, and they said some people got ran off the road as they were driving out of the national forest. And so the cops started showing mug shots, and they're like, those are the guys. So Kaufman and Martin were arrested and charged with grand theft. And while they were awaiting trial, they find out that the coroner says that Graham overdosed from barbiturates and cocaine. And then Kaufman and Martin were given 30-day suspended jail sentences, fined $300 each for a misdemeanor theft, and charged $708 for funeral home expenses. So they had to pay for the funeral.
Wow, how light can he get off?
Yeah, and Kaufman threw a benefit party to raise the funds to pay for the fines. And he called it Kaufman's Coffin Caper Concert with all K's.
That's funny.
Yeah, and they had commemorative beers that they gave out. And on the front it said, Graham Pilsner, a stiff drink for what ails you.
Wow.
Yeah, and
what good friends.
And at the Joshua Tree Motel, room number 8, where he passed away, the manager has reserved it, and it's only for people who ask to have that room.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for people who were who knew him or fans of him.
Who would know to ask for
Yeah,
him.
Exactly. But I guess there's also a statue of a guitar outside in commemoration of him.
Wow, that's crazy. That makes me want to go there just to ask for that room.
Yeah. And I guess Joshua Tree, the park, doesn't acknowledge that happened, but they tell the rangers that if someone asks, it's up to you if you want to tell the story or not.
Okay.
And that nobody really knows the exact spot he was burned on, but there's a place called Cap Rock, and people just assume they're made that the spot.
Yeah, just like a memorial.
Yeah, and people will go out there and put up memorials or
do hella
write
drugs.
stuff, do hella drugs, and then they say the caretakers of the park every once in a while have to go out and clean all that up.
All the beer cans
and the burnt candles and things.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I've never been to that. Have you been to that Joshua Tree?
No.
Oh, I've heard good things.
So have I.
I've been there.
It's like a bucket list, I think.
Yeah. You've traveled out of town and went hiking and stuff. Do you ever go to a specific place to hike, or is it whatever's close to wherever you're going to camp?
There's a...
Not to make you give away all your camping.
No, this is a bigger area, but there's a Mark Twain National Forest.
Okay.
Outside of St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
And there's a huge trail system there, and there's one loop that you can do in 3 days.
Mm-hmm. 3 days.
Yeah, you do
wow.
Yeah, so you camp 2 nights, and by the 3rd day you're back to your car.
That sounds tight, though.
Yeah, me and my friend Justin went to go do that, but the first part is this, what do they call it, switchbacks that climb up this mountain pretty much. And by the time we got to the top, we're because we're carrying 2 nights worth of gear and shit, and then he was having back issues at the time, so then he's I don't know. So we end up camping on top of this mountain, and then we walked back the next day, but it was cool. It was worth it.
Oh, that sounds tight.
Yeah.
I have to check that out sometime.
And I've also been to Colorado with the intent to go hiking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not just hiking, but actual hiking.
Not just quote unquote hiking.
Yes.
That's all right. What the fuck you know about gargoyles?
They're on churches.
Hell yeah, they are.
There was a cartoon
in the 90s.
Yes.
Shout out.
That in Gremlins 2, that one gremlin gets turned into a gargoyle.
Oh yes, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, the 3 gargoyles there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it started one of the fables that is kind of recognized as starting the trend of gargoyles was about a dragon in a forest of the outskirts of Rouen, France. It was a dragon named Gargoyle, and he was terrorizing the people that lived along the river, causing like floods and spitting water and sinking ships and killing hella people and destroying crops.
Yeah.
And
Gargoyle.
And he had a couple of different names.
Yeah.
But that was the coolest one that I wrote down.
Oh, that's cool.
The only one I wrote down. Yeah. But so the citizens started like sacrificing people to appease this dragon.
Yeah.
And it was like they would sacrifice one person a year.
And this is where at?
Outside of Rouen, France.
Okay.
I'm not sure where that is off the top of my head. And I didn't look it up, so I don't know that either. So leave it in the comments below.
Yes, Rouen, France.
So the citizens were sacrificing people to the dragon, but the beast was never satisfied and kept, terrorizing and stuff.
Sinking ships and shit.
Yeah, and so word would spread to nearby villages and stuff, and those villages got afraid that if the dragon, got mad enough, maybe he'd come to their village.
Or if he gets bored over there.
Yeah, if he gets bored terrorizing those old people. And so it just kind of spread out. Eventually, it got to this traveling Christian priest named Romanus. And when he heard the story... Gargoyle was one of the other names.
Gargoyle?
Yeah.
That almost sounds like Gargamel.
Gargamel from the Smurfs.
Yeah.
And he went to the city that was getting terrorized, and he convinced the people that he had the ability to defeat the dragon, and the dragon was a powerful demon, and he was attacking the city because they didn't have enough faith in God.
Okay.
So he was like, hey, if you build a big-ass church, then I'll take that faith and go defeat this dragon.
All right.
And God will be on our side. Solidarity, brother.
Yeah.
The city accepted the challenge, and after the church was built, Romanus went to the forest and to fight the dragon. He had a long journey. I'm sure he met a lot of characters along the way, and how adventures are.
Right.
And so he found the dragon and he rebuked it with his prayers.
Yes.
And I looked up rebuked, but I didn't write it down, it looks like. But it's essentially just being like, praise God, and then that hurts the demon.
Power of Christ compels you.
Yeah. Hell, that's a good rebuke.
Yeah.
If you ever find yourself fighting a demon, Power of Christ compels you is a good one. Good go-to.
Yes.
So he eventually weakened it enough with his prayers, and he was able to cut the dragon's head off in one swing of his sword.
Oh, shit. Snicker snatch.
Yeah, and then, so the body of the dragon disintegrated, but the head was still there, so he brought the head of the dragon back to the city, and where he ordered it to be placed on top of the walls of Rouen to, ward off any other demons.
Oh, okay, like a warning.
Yeah, to be like, hey, if you come here, dragons aren't
welcome.
Your kind ain't welcome here, dragons and demons. And so that's kind of the fable of the first gargoyle.
Okay.
And so in the Gothic ages, in France is where the gargoyle imagery started.
Okay.
Hunchback of Notre Dame, right?
Right.
I think that's originally
Notre
France.
Dame, yeah.
Yeah, Notre Dame. So they began appearing on churches and large buildings, having the head of a dragon, or body of a humanoid-like creature, and bat-like wings. Some other myths say that gargoyles were cruel demons that would be in people, and then when they would get exorcised in the church and they would try to fly out and escape, they would be like turned to stone.
Oh.
And then priests at one time were claiming that the statues were used to scare away evil spirits from the temples due to their frightening appearances and stuff. And in the reality, like the written history as opposed to hearsay type stuff,
right?
There's actually two structural features of these like medieval. Would you consider that medieval still, like the Gothic era?
Yeah,
medieval's a good word, so I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, that's probably when they started building them, even if it maybe ended in the Gothic period.
Okay. So there's actually two features for buildings. Gargoyles, coming from the French word gargula, meaning gullet or throat. These were like gutter-like features for moving the water away from the building when it would rain, because they were built out of stone, and water is just death to anything.
Yeah.
It would take more, to wear away stone than it would like your wooden house or like even to rust metal. But it would, years of the water flowing down the building would erode away at the structure. And so they were a lot of times just like kind of spouts sticking off the sides of buildings. Okay. And so that was invented in France, but I think they did it in Rome too.
Yeah.
They would have, a lot of times in Rome, it would be like a lion's head.
Okay, yeah, something spout.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they would make these gargoyles and I say gargoyles meaning just offshoots from the building.
Yeah.
And they slowly turned into, like lions, or they transformed into these like kind of gloomy fantasy creatures with like long necks and like evil looking mouths.
Yeah.
And I looked at a bunch of pictures and videos, but if you could imagine like what you think of when you think of gargoyle, but like a really long neck, and then it's got like a tongue sticking out and the water flows down.
Yeah.
They were just beginning to make them ornamental.
Okay.
But what people think gargoyles are, the name for that is actually a grotesque.
Oh, right.
And so they use these grotesques on buildings to disguise like visually unappealing sections, like two pieces of a roof come in, or like parts of a gutter that would be there, that either the whoever finances the building or the architect or the people who build it, they would all kind of have different inputs on where these gargoyles would go. And then it started becoming more common. Okay. Because, you see some cool ass shit on this building and you're like, well, I want 5 of those.
Yeah.
That guy's got 2. I want 5 of them. And so these grotesques, they would come in all different shapes. Like the common, evil face, humanoid body, bat wings was common. Yeah. But also like just general dragons, without the humanoid appearance and stuff like that. And sometimes they wouldn't have wings, and it even evolved to like sometimes they would be like goofy, or most of the time they were kind of scary.
Yeah. Like sometimes they had funny faces.
Yeah.
Like
I'm thinking of the door knockers from
Labyrinth.
Yeah. Where they kind of are goofy looking but scary at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that was in the medieval times, and now jump to 1908 from the author L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
The fourth book in the series, Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz, features like soundless, winged, flying wooden creatures with ugly faces. But in that book, they call them gargoyles.
Oh, okay.
So not necessarily visually like the grotesques.
Right.
But they have that same name. And then you go to pulp magazine Weird Tales. And that would have been around the 1930s.
Okay.
And this...
precursor to like Tales from the Crypt or Creep Show.
Yeah, what that stuff was probably all kind of based off of.
Yeah.
And who knows where they got the ideas for it. There could have been some earlier stuff. But author Clark... they had a lot of like... You could post like things for sale or, like how magazines were. They were like the television of the time.
Right.
And so author Clark Ashton Smythe wrote and published a short story within the magazine called The Maker of Gargoyles in 1932. And it was set in 12th century France and follows a stonemason, Blaise Renard, a good name.
Yeah.
As he carved 2 gargoyles for the local cathedral. And this dude was like a super outcast, and the townspeople kind of hated him. So as he was carving these gargoyles, he like kind of unknowingly put a lot of his like spite and anger into them.
Okay.
And so when they were eventually put up, they had some sort of magic in them, and they came to life. And that was kind of the first story that I had seen of these grotesques coming to life, and
wreaking havoc.
Yeah. Also published in 1932, The Horn of Valpoula by Lewis Spence, and this looked like it was in like a hardback book full of short stories, and it tells the story of a bishop who had a pact with Satan, and it binds a demon into the horned gargoyle of his cathedral. And so that was another, and so with this demon in the gargoyle, and again, this is kind of the history of how gargoyles became from one thing to another.
Right, how they became what they are now in like pop culture.
Yeah. And so it would have been a grotesque at the time, but in this story, again, they call it gargoyle. And then eventually it started picking up a lot of steam in the 70s. 1971, there was a Doctor Who episode that featured a gargoyle monster. And then in 1974, Dungeons & Dragons first edition included gargoyles as a monster.
Oh, okay.
And then, 1984, Ghostbusters had the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper. And then, of course, you have the 90s animated series Gargoyles, and then the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So the concept of a gargoyle being a monster is actually fairly new.
Yeah. Huh.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
In the last 70 years.
Yeah, now 70 years.
Yeah.
Or 50 or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I woke up in the middle of the night and was like, what the fuck is up with gargoyles?
Where'd they come from?
Yeah, I thought there would maybe be more fables of stone creatures coming to life.
Yeah. No, I thought they were kind of warding or something, because I have a ceramic one that I always put in somewhere up high. Okay. It's on my top of my fridge right now, but in every place I've been, it's always been up somewhere.
And at one time, priests did say that it would ward off evil, but it seems like there's a lot more to them than it's fairly new.
Huh.
So I thought that was interesting.
That is kind of interesting. I'm gonna show you a picture.
Oh, okay. I'll describe it to the listeners in great detail.
In great detail? Maybe. Let's see. So,
it's a hot dog.
Yes.
Just kidding. Oh, you didn't even have it saved on your phone, Dave? You gotta Google it?
Well, it's like the first one that pops up. I was just debating. Okay. Not that one. Hold on. There.
Oh my gosh. It's a very large man. He looks both tall and heavy set, wearing like a rolled up sleeves, button up shirt, a ton of tattoos. It's got a couple of spots on it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He looks dirty.
Yeah, it looks all kind of crinkled up.
Yeah,
it looks old timey.
And what kind of pose would you say?
He's doing like some sort of bear monster pose, like he's trying to scare somebody.
Yeah.
A bald man.
He's a bald man. Yes, a big guy. His name is Joe Methy.
Okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah.
God-given name, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And he's a serial killer.
Oh, really?
He kind of looks the part, right?
He certainly has that appearance.
Yes.
But so do a lot of people who are not, but...
Right. And his claim to fame is...
killing.
And making people into...
clothes.
Hamburger.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You know, if it's turning into meat, somebody's eating it.
Yeah. Well...
and it's probably not just him.
Right. Well, he had the whole troubled youth.
Okay.
Where his dad died when he was young.
Probably got hit on the head real hard.
Maybe.
At some point.
It didn't really say.
Peed the bed.
But he said his mom was a drug addict and that she would kind of give people money to take care of her kids. And so that he bounced around kind of like he had foster parents, but not really in the foster system.
Okay.
And then he said when he was 18, his mom died, and then he joined the army and went in 1973.
Okay.
And did a stint in Vietnam.
All right.
But his mom wasn't dead.
What?
And his mom said that he was stationed somewhere in Germany. But either way, he said when he was in the army, he picked up a habit of doing heroin.
Okay.
And when he got back to the States after he left the army, he just started doing a bunch of heroin and cocaine and drinking. And
drugs are okay until you have a problem with them.
And he said he was kind of homeless and hang around with that kind of heroin, but kind of the methy crowd.
Okay.
So he knew all the seedy underground methy people. But he met a girl and made her.
Wow, what a love story.
Yeah, made her his wife, and he kind of cleaned up a little bit and became a truck driver.
Okay.
And they had a kid, and they were still kind of cocaine people because he's a truck driver. I'm sure he's not going to let go of that habit. Yeah. The heroin, falling asleep, might be something, but you can still do the cocaine.
Hell yeah.
But one day he came home to find his wife and kid are gone. And he starts asking around, and it turns out that she met another guy.
Oh, no.
And he, swept her away. But then as he was, talking to the seedy underbelly, he finds out that, no, it wasn't all, he swept her off her feet. He got her addicted to heavier stuff.
Oh, no.
And started prostituting her out.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. And so he's like, what the crap? And he...
what the crap?
Yeah, he gets a job being a forklift driver.
Okay.
But he's still just living out of his truck and his pickup truck, not his tractor trailer.
Okay.
And talking to the underbelly, because he gets
seedy underbelly.
Because he gets drugs and he hangs out with those kind of people.
Did you say where this was? Wasn't still in Germany. It was back in the U.S.
Yeah, it was back in the U.S.
Okay. Doesn't matter. Keep going.
Okay. But then he finds out that there's a drug something a bust happens and his kid got taken away from his wife and the guy she ran away with. So he's like, what the fuck? And he gets real pissed off, so he goes to try to find him. And he's asking around trying to find him, and he meets one prostitute, and she's like, I don't know who you're talking about, I don't know anything. No, I haven't heard anything about this lady. And so he strangles her.
How dare you not give me the information?
Yeah. And then ends up burying her in a shallow grave.
That's better than hamburger, I would think.
And and then he's people are telling him that there's this bridge that his ex-wife used to hang out underneath.
Ooh.
So he goes over there, and all he finds is a different sex worker.
Oh, no.
And
doesn't look good for her.
And he asks her what's up, and she doesn't know. So he throttles her to death.
Damn.
And then he just kind of throws her in the bush. And while he's under the bridge, these two guys come down. I think it was like Randy and Randall.
God.
And like they start doing drugs and stuff. And then he's like, he sees a mattress down there, and he's like, that's probably where my ex-wife turns her tricks. And of course he gets super pissed off and asks these guys if they know what's going on. And they're like, no, man. And they're all like out of it because they're on drugs.
All strung out.
And I heard that he either used an axe or a metal pipe that he just found on the ground, and he bludgeoned them to death.
Okay.
And he went and threw those guys into the river under the bridge.
Okay.
And there's a fisherman nearby, so he's like, oh, I wonder if this guy saw, so I got to take care of him. So then
it really just piles up.
Beats the fisherman to death. And that was all in like a 7-hour period.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, so once he snapped, he just got five, what was it?
That was 5.
Yeah, like 5.
2 ladies, 2 gentlemen, and a fisherman.
Yeah, 5 dead bodies under his belt. And so he hears more people coming because this is a famous crack place, I guess.
Yeah.
And so he takes off, and then later on, he goes back around and digs up the one lady, and he says he cuts her head off and puts it in the box, and then just throws the rest of her body away. And
dismemberment's the next level.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I heard, and another thing I heard is that he cleaned the head up and then used it for some nefarious activities.
Oh gosh!
Before he put it in a box to keep it.
For future nefarity.
Yeah, but he was picked up off suspicion of killing the Randy Randall guys.
Randy Randalls.
And he sat in jail for like 1.5 years awaiting trial. Mm-hmm. And then when he went to trial, it got turned over or thrown out because they didn't have any hard evidence.
Oh, okay.
Because he threw the bodies in the river. They didn't have bodies, and they didn't really have a murder weapon.
And they didn't have any witnesses because
he got the fisherman. Yeah. And so, but when he got out of prison, he was like, I guess, in his words, while he was in prison, he would just replay killing people over and over again in his head because it made him like excited.
Hell yeah.
And so when he got out, he's like, I'm going to do this again.
Hey.
Yeah.
He had a plan.
Yeah. Right. So he started picking up sex workers, bringing them back, or he got his job back at the pallet factory driving a forklift.
Yeah.
And it was like at the end of this dead end road. Mm-hmm. And there was a trailer on there, and his friend was the owner of the pallet factory and let him live in the trailer.
Okay.
So now he's in a secluded area at the end of a dead end road. Perfect place to be a serial killer.
I mean, when God gives you a dead end trailer,
yeah, right,
you murder people.
Yeah, and it said he lured like 2 girls back, and then he ended up having his way with them.
Oh, okay, and, graping them.
Well, drugging them, then raping them, then killing them.
You gotta say grape, Dave. We're gonna get demonetized.
Well, I was gonna say SA. That's not what they say when they SA. But he didn't know what to do with their bodies, so he chopped them up, and then he like had this thought in his head, and he just started cutting off the meatiest bits of it and putting it in Tupperware, and then putting them in his deep freezer. And then the rest of the parts, like the meat and the bones, he just buried in a shallow grave. Because, of course, the pallet factory is surrounded by woods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
he found his little own murder oasis.
Yeah. And he got curious about the meat, and he tried it, and he's like, this tastes like pork. So then he's like, huh. And he, like, starts experimenting with it.
He's like fucking salt. So that salt guy.
Salt Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like fucking Gordon Ramsay of people.
Yeah, and like he gets the idea that maybe he can make money from his murders.
Oh, you're really just full circling it.
Yeah, so he opened up a roadside roast beef open pit barbecue.
Ugh.
It said he sold hamburgers.
This makes me not want to eat at roadside places anymore.
Well, yeah, not some like a food truck, but if it's just a guy's truck,
Yeah.
and he's got his barbecue spit there, but it said open pit, so it's just a hole in the ground that he's cooking food over. But he said he started making a beef.
He started making a killing.
Yeah, but he made these beef and pork hamburgers that he also sold with next to his roast beef and pork sandwiches, and he would call that his special meat.
Okay.
Because he said human tasted like pork, so if you mix it with hamburger and said it was a pork and beef hamburger.
Little did they know.
Yes. And then he ended up selling out and then needed more meat, special meat. And he tried to do the whole thing again where he got a sex worker to come over. And he started kind of messing with her, and she like ran away. But he's like, you're in the pallet factory, and there's like an 8-foot high fence with barbed wire.
Oh, gosh.
So he pulls her back in and then tries to go to town on her, but she like is able to kick away from him, jump out the window, climb an 8-foot thing of pallets, and jump over the barbed wire fence.
Oh, my gosh.
And because he was such a big, burly guy, he couldn't get her back. And then he's like, well, crap. So then he calls the friend who owns the pallet farm, because
pallet
factory, pallet farm.
He's got just ears of pallets growing out of the ground.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, you need to help me move some bodies because the fuzz are gonna be here." And the guy's like, and he actually called and was like, "Hey, this guy's trying to get me to move bodies."
Not as good a friend as those guys that stole the musician's body.
Yeah. But, yeah, obviously he gets... I've heard one where, like, he went to a Christmas party, and when he was coming out of the Christmas party, they got him. And I've heard one thing that said, well, after his friend was like, no, I'm not going to help you, he just stood outside of his trailer and just waited for the cops to come because he knew the gig was up.
Yeah.
Or the jig was up.
The jig was up.
Yeah. But there's evidence that he killed people, but not as many as he claims to have. And the only report that we have on the hamburgers is his own story.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's no receipts.
Some sort of, like, murder idolist.
Yeah, like, maybe he was just... Because he looks like he would boast. Like, maybe he killed two... Because he got charged for 2 people and the assault with the 1 girl. But the 5 he first initially murdered, there was no proof that he killed the 2 guys, but he claimed later that of course I did, plus a fisherman, plus 2 hookers. And then he said he also killed like 10 other sex workers while he was doing the pit barbecue.
He does look like a guy that would try to bolster his ego.
Yeah, and saying that like my mom was a drug dealer and would just pay people to watch us.
And she was like, I just smoked a little bit of weed sometimes.
And she's like, yeah, I worked 2 jobs. That's why I wasn't there. I'm still alive. Like, yeah. So it was an interesting one, but I don't know how truthful it is considering it was his words.
If nothing else, it would be a good story for a made-for-TV drama.
Yeah. And considering that I think he wrote a story about his life.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of it, it's like, next time you're driving down the road and you see a little roadside pit barbecue, you might want to think twice about what you're eating.
That was my first instinct.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah. If you have human hamburgers, what goes better than human cheese?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's worse, human hamburgers or human cheese?
Well, a chef named Daniel Angerer made waves in headlines when he posted a recipe for breast milk cheese on his blog because his wife had just given birth and he was noticing how much extra breast milk they had. So he was like...
I mean, it's a valuable resource.
Yeah, so he was like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can make cheese out of it. And he did, but the health department quickly was like, no. Because first off, it has to be pasteurized.
Oh.
And secondly, like, no.
You certainly shouldn't be able to sell it. Probably shouldn't even be giving it away.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you should be able to make some breast milk cheese at home.
Yeah, and it said, like, it's something more that you could probably do on the black market or just, like, for friends and family.
Yeah. Because there is somebody, I'm sure, that would pay good money for it.
Yeah. The Smithsonian had a exhibit where it was called Food Bigger Than the Palate. And they actually got some British celebrities to like swab their noses and ears and inside their mouth and their toes and their belly buttons and send it in. And then
the Smithsonian,
yeah. And then scientists and cheesemakers at the London Biolab did an open call for bacteria from celebrities. And this guy Suggs, the singer.
This guy Suggs.
Suggs, yeah. Well, the singer for the ska band Madness.
Okay.
You know, our house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He sent his in and said he wanted to be made into cheddar. Alex James, the bassist for the band Blur, chose Cheshire cheese. Celebrity chef Hinson Blumenthal went with Camote. And Great British Bake Off runner-up and food writer...
Runner-up?
I know. And food writer Ruby Tandorf chose a Stilton. And while rapper Professor Green, who admitted he truly hates cheese, said, well, make me a mozzarella, bro. It's the only one I can taste, or like tolerate. And so, yeah, they took these cultures and then cultivated them in the lab until they got enough that they could then use it to make cheese.
Because cheese is like mold from milk?
Yeah, or you can use milk and then put bacteria in it to make cheese.
Wow.
Yeah. And
I don't trust science anymore.
No. And according to the museum, the point of the project is to reframe microbes. Currently, most people look at microbes as potentially harmful pathogens. But without them, our everyday existence would be impossible. They interact with each other, performing different roles, helping to form us, feed us, and protect us. It's now thought that the composition of our microbiome may even affect our mood, weight, intelligence, and personality. So it was all kind of like a ploy to be like, the stuff on your body is not always bad or like gross.
Yeah, I feel like, when did you say when this was?
Oh, no.
Okay. Well, I feel like just recently, now that I've been an adult, that the whole gut microbiome thing has really been more mainstream.
Yeah, well, the one chef, the breast milk chef, was 2010, so I'm sure this was probably after that.
Okay, yeah.
Probably closer to the 2020s, maybe. Because that's when all that stuff started, like, being like gut biome and probiotics and kimchi and whatever that other weird drink is. Kombucha, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're just here to keep you safe and healthy, folks.
Right. And they're like, it's not that weird, because they didn't taste it, obviously, but they were saying it's not that weird because if you think about how your feet or your armpits stink, there is kind of an overlap with cheese.
Yeah, that smell.
Yeah.
Like, people pay good money for cheese that smells like your butt.
Yeah, blue cheese.
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on another ride with us, folks. You time-traveling beauties, you.
Yes.
Hope you're staying safe.
Staying warm.
And be good to yourselves.
Yes, and remember, like sand through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives.
Whoa, that was crazy.
What was that?
I don't know. A bunch of stuff fell over.